So I don't normally do core talks, but this is one of my favorite ones to do. So every year for the last 19 years, we bring interns to the Penn State Southeast Research Farm and have to train them in doing calibrations because they do the lion's share of the day-to-day work in our tunnels. And so this is basically how we train them so that they can do those kind of calibrations. If you have questions on the way through, I've tried to make this as simple as possible because you all should be calibrating constantly. And the problem in a tunnel is you start off with a little plant about this big, 2 weeks later it's this big, and 2 weeks later it's this big. All the way through, you are using different amounts of water to make that work. If you're not calibrating on a regular basis, then you're doing things not as good as you could. So let's get started here. So whether you're using an autofogger, the autofogger is going to be outside of what we're talking about today because basically the autofogger, all you do is follow the instructions on the fogger for the volume that you're using. Make sure that you are using the right nozzle on your autofogger. If you're spraying anything like any of the peroxyacetic acids, you need special nozzles that's really hard on them. And if you work with Dram is the most common company, you work with Dram and they will help you figure out which autofogger nozzle you actually want. So then we get into cart sprayers. Very common, they're a great way to do this. We developed a modified cart sprayer for all the work we did at the Penn State Farm. John Stepanchek has long been the lead technician there, so he and I put our heads together a few years ago and we took the equivalent of a cart sprayer with a hose, with a long hose, and we modified it and we kept building out until we had this thing. This is called the Bogash sprayer. Okay, my idea is John's welding. I am a terrible welder, so John put this together, and what you have is a 35-gallon tank with a 200-foot reel. So you park it perpendicular to the entrance to your tunnels. You drag it out. You spray your way out. The one thing that we did that really worked out nice is it has a little radio controller on there on the hose reel. So when you're out, especially at the end of a long tunnel and you got all that hose laying out, you wear a little key fob on your wrist and you can wind it back in as you're going back in so you're not tripping over this. This piece of equipment is at the Penn State Southeast Research Farm. Many people, we've demonstrated it at PVGA field days, many people have come and have sketched it out. We wanted to do a set of draft building plans from it, but we just never got the money to do that particular part of it. If you schedule there at the farm, you can come and build it out. What you'll see in the pictures is everything forward of all those stainless steel tanks is what I'm talking about. The stainless steel tanks in the back, they're really only for research because a lot of times we've gone out where we need to spray 6, 7, 8 materials in the same day. And so we can mix them all up at once, go out and deal with all that, do one clean out and then go back out again. Most of the time when we're spraying tunnels for insects or disease control, we're just using that one single tank. It gets up to about 110, 125 PSI. Pressure is everything when you're making these applications in a tunnel. If you are trying to use an old hand pump backpack, I admire you, but you are not delivering the material where you need to go. You really need power to make this work. And remember, whoever dies with the most toys wins, so power is everything in doing this. Only the men get that joke. That has just a regular roller pump on a PTO shaft. On that last piece of equipment.
Can you have too much PSI?
You can, so the question is, can you have too much PSI? The answer is very simple, no. Okay, a strawberry grower many years ago hauled me to his farm because he had just come back from the North Carolina strawberry meeting to show me what he had built, and he had a 300 PSI strawberry sprayer. 6 nozzles on a single row of strawberries, and you can't use regular hoses. He was using hydraulic hoses on there because he was blowing out his regular hoses. It looked like he was going to rip the strawberry plants out of the ground, but what he got was the most spray on a real big dense strawberry. It was amazing how well it actually covered. So answering David's question directly, you cannot have too much power. Okay, And for those of you who remember Tim, the tool man, this is very accurate information they shared on that. More power is better. So these are the powered backpacks that I've long used over the years. The one on the left is a Solo, if I remember, it's like a 462 or 426. It gets up to about 42 PSI. It was our workhorse for a lot of years. I love the fact that it's very even in the pressure that it puts out, but it's only 42 PSI. And so once, somebody at this meeting recommended that I get the Dram BP4, which is on the right of that one. It is a wonderful backpack sprayer. It gives you about 2 hours of spray to a charge. The charge takes 6 or 8 hours. 150 PSI, and if you look at the nozzles, and I'm pretty sure I have a picture of that in there, it's got these twin turbine nozzles. It'll run you, depending on when you go online and look for it, it'll run between 520 and 620 online. It is worth every bit of it. Take good care of it. You will treasure this piece of equipment. Obviously, gas-powered things like that all will give you similar. I don't like the noise of a gas backpack. I was in the landscape industry for far too long. I don't want a backpack blower on my back ever again. That Dram BP4, it's amazing the kind of coverage. It will give you equal coverage for about 60% of the water. And Dave, I was just talking about your strawberry sprayer at 300 PSI. You missed that part. Yeah. So we're going to talk about calibrating it. So calibrating in a tunnel is the easiest thing to do. So the first thing you do is you fill your sprayer with a measured amount of clean water, okay? And you want to be really accurate as you're doing this. I use a gallon because I know a 96-foot tunnel, when it's loaded with tomatoes and peppers, is going to take somewhere between 8 and 12 gallons of water. So 1 gallon will spray enough so you can have a pretty good idea where you're going. You spray it until it's empty. You count the number of plants that you covered effectively. You can see this is real high-level math that we're doing here. And then you repeat this every 2-3 weeks because things change really quickly. And you can easily figure out how to do this. And so this is our calibration example here. So we have a 32 by 96 foot high tunnel. There's 6 rows of tomatoes in there, and I apologize to the video crew. Chuck, you were saying I got to keep turning my head to look at my screen. I can only do that. So we have 6 rows of tomatoes on 18-inch in-row spacings. That gives us 90 feet of effective rows. So we have, of the 96 foot, you got to have 3 feet at least on each end. So we take 90 feet, we divide it by 1.5 feet for 18 inches. That gives us 60 plants in the row. Our population is 360 plants. My 1 gallon of water in this particular stage of growth covered 45 plants. You can see where we're going with this bit of math. So we take 360 plants total, divide it by 45. That tells us we needed 8 gallons to cover that. Doesn't get any easier than that, okay? And you just have to do this on a regular basis all the way through. So you want about 8.5 gallons of mix so you can make sure that you're doing a real good job as you do that. And you just keep repeating it. And you really, this is the most important part of this though, is you have to check the thoroughness of your coverage. One of the things I have always noticed with new people when they're spraying, and I know you all are experienced hands in here, but we get rushed. If you're not spraying your tomatoes all the way into that canopy, then you're not getting the kind of control you want. If you're going to take the time to mix up materials and do this application, spray it all the way into the canopy. Make sure that you're getting good coverage. You're only going to do that with fine droplets and high pressure, and you want to check that coverage. So what you see on the screen right now are the 2 different sprayers. These are these 2 battery sprayers, and we could have compared any of them. So the one on the left is at 42 PSI. That's the older Solo battery-powered sprayer. It is now relegated to an herbicide sprayer. It's perfect as an herbicide sprayer. The one on the right is the BP4 that I was talking about with these twin nozzles. And it looks like a pair of tornadoes coming out the end. And it's amazing once you start spraying with that. You get that deposition around the back of the leaf because it's so fine. You can work really quick, and you need to train people how to spray properly. It's one of those things that it's not intrinsic when folks first start spraying, because I watch new people, and I always let them loose the first time, and I want to see how they're going to spray, and they always spray the same way. They want to walk down the row, aim, and keep on going. And what you need to train them to do is to take that nozzle forcing in and go back and forth in a washing motion as you're working your way through the tunnel, so you're pushing that all the way in there. But you need to check, even with this really fine droplet size, and give you guys a laser pointer too, just to be fair to the folks at the far end of the room. So the screen on the right, even with that really fine droplet size, you want to check and make sure that it's getting all the way in. Well, when you're doing it with water, it's very easy to put your hand in there, but I'm not a real fan of that method. It's not the easiest way to do it. I like the water-sensitive strips. You can get these from Gempler's and a lot of the other spray companies out here, and so they start off with this nice neutral color, and I've seen them pink, like a Pepto-Bismol pink as well. Put them all through your canopy. Use clothespins to put them in. Do what you think is a good spray. It is not unusual the first time through to see this kind of spray coverage. When you're looking for this kind of spray coverage, it's slowing down, it's having the right pressure, and so this is the best way to calibrate your spray. And these water-sensitive strips are a wonderful training tool to make sure that you are getting that kind of really accurate coverage. So you're getting all the way into that canopy. And you want to put them at different angles. You want to put them deep into the canopy. I like them as a tool because they are very inexpensive and they give you a boatload of information. The first time you stick your hand in, it is now wet. So how do you go and check the next spot? So you got to dry off your hand to use it again. These things work really well, and they will teach you to slow down. Especially in tunnels, we all tend to try and rush our way through. And when the canopy starts closing in and you've got 12 or 14 inches to push your way through with a backpack sprayer, what you want to do is get through there as quickly as possible, especially when it's 90 degrees. This will teach you to slow down so you get the kind of coverage you want so you can keep your crop going as long as possible. Most of the times when I get to farms over the years and they have had a spray failure, folks will tell me this did not work, and they fill in the blank for whatever chemical or material. And you start looking around and you can see where it worked real well in one spot, usually where they started spraying, and it works really lousy where they finished spraying. And you know what happens when you're finished spraying? You start rushing a little bit more, or you didn't calibrate well enough, and so you mixed up 7 gallons of spray when you needed 8, and you're gonna make it finish. And so that last little bit just doesn't get covered very well. Let's see, I gotta stand forward to make this happen. Oh, here we go. So, amount of material. This is the last part of calibration. So this is the basic math. There are 2 different ways. So we're not talking about herbicide calibration here, okay? We are talking about spraying foliage, talking about spraying plants. So there's 2 methods. One is the square foot method. The square foot method, I think, is a lot more effective out in the field. I don't like it in tunnels because we all use every square foot of our tunnel. We go much higher densities in our tunnels than we do out in the field. I know for me, when I do tomatoes outdoors, I'm doing them on 6-foot rows. Sometimes I'll do my rows 8 foot apart if I've got the extra room. It's just much easier out in the field to do it. I never put my rows further apart than 5 foot in tunnels. So what that means is our density is much higher. If you're putting out the same amount of material in that 5-foot area as you would in a 6 or 8, you are way low on the amount of active ingredient that you're putting out here. So this is the square foot method, and so this is the same tunnel I used before. And so if we take our 32 by 96 is 3,072 square feet. We divide that by 43,560, the square feet in an acre. We get to 0.07 acres. And so now on any pesticide that you're using, you multiply that times 0.07, you know how much to use, okay? It's the most straightforward, easiest way of doing this. The problem is that that's the same as a field acre, and our densities don't work very well. So then my favorite way of doing it is by plant population. So everything here is the same. Our number of tomatoes in a, oh, I didn't finish this the other day. So I got hit by the flu really bad on Thursday when I was trying to get all these presentations done. This is my 4th one I've done since I've been here, and I knew somewhere I must have messed up because I was having fever dreams like you just could not believe. So this is where I started messing up, and I meant to go back and fix all this. What you will see if I had done this properly is when you go to this particular version of this, where even that math is wrong, so that's 360 plants, and so an acre of field tomatoes is 4,840 plants. I took 43,560. I divide it by 6 foot, how far apart the rows are, and then you divide it again by 1.5. That gets you to 4,840 For peppers, you just double it because we typically do peppers on double diagonal rows. So the math holds up in doing that. And then you take your number of plants, that should be 360 divided by 4,840, and what you get is about 0.08. So we have more plants per acre, and so if you were to do it based on a square footage method, you're going to be low on active ingredient, okay, for what you need. And you have to remember, almost all the guides out there are going to be based on outdoor stuff. Those of us that are way ahead of the curve working in tunnels and working indoors, we've got to translate all that material over, and this is the easiest way to translate that over, is go by plant population. Once you know what a standard plant population is, it's very easy to do that. So here are the numbers I'm going to give you that you need to have. An acre of tomatoes is 4,840 plants. That's a standard field mulched acre of tomatoes. Peppers is 9,680 plants. Cucumbers is 7,260 because we typically put cucumbers 1 foot apart out in the field and you get that same one. Then you can take those numbers and by doing this particular formula where you actually finish the math versus the way that I did it, you can come up with your fraction of an acre and convert that backwards. However, so this is a tiny advertisement for Marone. They are paying my salary today. This is the company I work for now, and please visit us in booth number 102. And that's the end of the advertisement. We've got this guide for small mixes. And so please come up and get a copy of this from us. This is one of the challenges that all of us have working indoors is doing that calculation to go from acre into our square footage, and oftentimes you're mixing up 1 gallon, 5 gallons, etc. So what we did is for all of our products right now, we've got a table up in the booth which tells you how many tablespoons per gallon of mix. So once you do that first part of this calibration step, it's very easy. Now you know exactly how much of our material. What I would recommend you do is go talk to the other companies, and if they aren't doing this, irritate the stuffing out of them if it's your favorite material. If they won't do that, well, we'll help you out. We will gladly sell you material. So things can go wrong, and this is really important because I have killed plants. I often kill plants for you guys so that you don't have to do it. So last year, I had a bunch of very young cucumber transplants because David and I have talked about these programs a lot, doing things indoors. So I had a bunch of young cucumber transplants. I was rushing, and so I did my conversion using an azadirachtin product. It's a neem oil extract product, so it's an oil. I did my conversion from acre down to what I was doing, but I did not factor in young plants. And I put on a large plant dose. I mean, all the math was right, but I didn't factor that my plant was only this tall with 3 leaves. That oil burnt the leaves right off of them. I mean, it set them back. They did come back from it, but I bet I lost 2 weeks of growth on them as they had to regenerate leaves. And so watch your dose when you're doing that. And I go back to a table like this that gives you an amount of active ingredient per gallon, then you're only putting that much on, is much easier. I took that acre number, converted it down using my plant population because I thought I was clever in doing that, overdosed the stuffing out of those pure cucumbers and burnt the leaves right off. And so guides like this are very, very helpful in making all this happen. So tank mixes, you've often heard this a lot. I'm an advocate of tank mixes. They make our lives much easier, and you can often combine, especially in the bio world, you can often combine a fungicide with an insecticide and maybe even a trace of some background, some foliar nutrient. Mix it up in a jar before you do it. Take a look at what happens in that jar. Bad things. If the jar explodes, you probably did not want to spray that, okay? If the jar freezes, then I want to know what you did. That was an interesting experiment, and I want to know what that mix was. If it makes sludge, especially if you are putting calcium and phosphorus into the same jar along with what you're doing, you're going to get instant sludge. What a wonderful thing to figure out in a mason jar before you have to figure out how to completely dismantle your sprayer. These are all little things that will make your life a lot easier. And so always use the lowest rate. When you're doing tank mixes, use the lowest rate for each material as your starting point. You don't need to go high rate on most of them. Weather and sunlight. I do not recommend spraying at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun is up. It is the worst time to spray. Best time to spray almost all these materials is right before sunsets. Give it time to dry. But almost all materials, that is the best time to spray your tunnels. And for short REI, short PHI materials, like in the biological community, next day you're right back to work again. Not that I am poo-pooing conventionals, but I know where my paycheck comes from at this point. Watch your heat source. Coal will really aggravate phytotoxicity in a lot of sprays. If you are using coal, coal is a real problem, especially if the furnace is completely indoors. When you open that door during heating season, you change the dynamics of your coal furnace. You can oftentimes have fumes belching back in. Wood is often not a whole lot better. So heat source and spraying can be a real problem for you. Make sure that your heat source is isolated from what you're doing. And watch your old heaters. If you've even old propane heaters with leaky heat exchangers on them can aggravate that. You can get all kinds of sulfur oxides and things like that that will leak in there, which will really aggravate any other problems that you have. And that's me. There's my email address and phone number. Can I entertain any questions? Yes.
I'll just give one comment. A tip that I got from a guy at University of Mississippi, where if you've got something that's ounces that you
Here,
okay.
please.
Just if you've got something that's out in ounces, 3 ounces per acre, that you convert it to milliliters first, and then you can divide by 40 to make an easy calculation to get, and then you've got per 1,000 square feet.
Okay, appreciate that. Other comments or questions? Yes.
Your comment about spraying after 3 o'clock,
Yes.
is that true for outside sprays also?
So here's the problem with spraying. So the question is the comment about 3 o'clock, is it good for outside sprays too? It depends what you're spraying. So if you are spraying an insecticide, especially one that is not bee friendly, the later in the day you spray, the better off you're going to be. Bees are early workers, and so the later in the day you spray, as long as you can get drying before it gets dark, you're in good stead. But the problem with water droplets is they act as lenses. And so if you have a crop that's under stress, putting all these little hot lenses on it on a hot day does not help that crop any. You're always better off to spray toward the end of the day. It is the best time to spray as long as you are leaving time to dry. Having said that, so I come from an extension background. That's ideal. The ideal world is not where most of us work. If you've got to spray at 3 o'clock because that's what fits in your schedule because you got 20 more things to get done before it gets dark, get the product on, especially after 3 days of rain. There's the what we like, and then there's the reality. Get your product on. Okay, guys, thank you very much.